Oh, how can one meditate to learn how to let go of a loved one that you fear to lose? It's a good question. It's not an easy question. The one thing I will say is, I said it in my talk, doing these contemplations and practicing your meditation will help allow this to come naturally. When you recollect every day that you will be separated from everybody that you hold dear, that you and everybody you know and love will grow old, grow sick, and will die, eventually you're developing this habit of training yourself to understand that this is true. Now, of course, you can just repeat it like a mantra. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to really understand it. That's where the meditation comes in. That's where your daily practice of sitting down or walking or standing or whatever you're doing, developing full awareness, clear comprehension of what you're doing, like I talked about during the mindfulness of eating little thing that I gave. So this practice is allowing you to see reality as it truly is. And when you see reality as it truly is, and you know it with your own experience, then it just naturally occurs that if this loved one is there and they die, then okay. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to have grief. I mean, you'll still, you're going to have an attachment. If you have an attachment, you have sadness when somebody dies. You have grief when somebody dies. It's just the way it is. The only person who doesn't have this grief and attachment are awakened ones. I mentioned it in my talk, the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. One of the telling scenes for me is when the Buddha died, and people they say, beating their breasts and rending their hair and saying, oh, too soon has the life of the teacher been, too soon has he left us. And then in the corner you have these awakened beings just sitting there peacefully saying, all things are subject, all things are impermanent. Things that arise are subject to cease. How can it be otherwise? And you think, wow, yeah, I want to be like that. That's amazing. But, that's just part of the practice. So, everybody who is a loved one, you're going to fear to lose. There's a sutta where the Buddha talks to this grandmother, and he asks her a question, something like that. Would you love all of the young children in this city? And she's like, yes, like orphans and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, yeah, so yeah, I would. And basically the gist of it, he says, if you have 100 dear ones, you have 100 sufferings. And he goes down and he says, if you have one dear one, you have one suffering. And that's not saying, you should not like anybody and have no attachments and if you get to that point, maybe you want to become a monk or go in the woods or whatever. But for the average lay person, for the average person who's not going to become a monk and who's not like, yeah, I want to get off this train, I want to become awakened, you're going to have dear ones. It's just the fact of life. And the fact of life that if you have dear ones, you're going to suffer when you have a loss or a separation of those dear ones. So continuing these contemplations of the five subjects for contemplating, practicing, doing your meditation practice, all of this will be evident as you practice, as you develop your insight into the true nature of how this works. All of it will become self-evident. Questions tend to lessen because you've already answered them through your own experience. And you come to a point where, I remember vividly, and it shocked me, the first time I was doing walking meditation at work, which I did often in the morning. That's where I did my meditation. And I had a thought, and the thought related to my mother. And instead of saying my mom, my mind said this being. And I was like, whoa. I was able to detach from this is my mother, and I have this attachment to her. But it was I felt like there was a little bit of a detachment that that left there, or a little bit of attachment that left. She's still my mother. When she still dies, unless I become an awakened being before she dies, which is not going to happen. And when she dies, I'm still going to have sadness. But this practice allows you to accept and understand these things as reality. And, you know, when they're gone, yeah, you're sad, but you know how to move on. You know how to live life. You know, my wife died way before I was a Buddhist and all this kind of stuff. But, you know, one of the things that she wanted me to do was live my life, right? I knew she was going. She knew she was going. She told me to live my life. Not to, you know, in Hollywood when a spouse dies, people are like, you know, hide themselves in a room for months and are depressed and all this stuff. And that's not, I mean, you could do that, but in reality, that's kind of not how it is. Going through that kind of experience really changes you, and if you let it, it changes you in a good way. And so I learned how to live by being that partner of my wife going through what she went through and understanding that. So you can take this, if there is somebody who is, you know, who is maybe going right now, or who is going through something where they might die, and you have that fear, that dread that's coming up, that I'm going to lose this person. Watch it. Observe it. It's your experience giving you the opportunity to learn. Don't let it pass.